He said that I'm in a good place now, but I'm speaking out because there are other innocent people not in my family that have been burned by my parents, which is why I feel like I need to speak
Mm.
out. That's why he's saying it. He's not having a tantrum for himself. He's saying I'm healing and growing because I have my
Hmm.
life with my wife in a completely different country and I'm happy, but there are other people still suffering under the way they are secretly acting.
This actually could be a problem for you because if it wasn't for the fact that your wife was rich already, you could actually end up in
Poor.
a bad situation financially, right?
You
If
could
your
go from
parents are trying to
champagne
take
problems
away,
to ordinary poor people problems
you
within
could go from
after signing
champagne
that.
problems to Lambrini. That's what you could go from.
Yeah, so we just want to be clear as we're going through all of our points that we are trying to approach this from an unbiased perspective, which is why
Hmm.
sometimes we'll say, okay, if Brooklyn is telling the truth, then actually this is more serious than it seems, but
Hmm.
he could be lying.
Hmm.
So we don't want you to think as we're going through this that we're on one side or the others because we have been through things where we can fully see if he's telling the truth, this should be paid attention to. It should not be dismissed.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, there are just attention seeking children, whether they're rich or not, who will out their family members just for attention, just for clout. And so we are not putting aside any one of those things, which is why we have so much to say about Candace's point of
Hmm.
view, because she has done that very thing. And all of us do not have the full picture, which is why all we can do is speculate. But obviously in that speculation we then really should be unbiased, otherwise we're just you almost can't draw a conclusion with the information we have. Anyway, let's continue.
Hmm.
Recently, I have seen with my own eyes the lengths that they will go through to place countless lies in the media, mostly at the expense of innocent people to preserve their own facade. But I believe the truth always comes out.
I just want to highlight what he said. He said that I'm in a good place now, but I'm speaking out because there are other innocent people not in my family that have been burned by my parents, which is why I feel like I need to speak
Mm.
out. That's why he's saying it. He's not having a tantrum for himself. He's saying I'm healing and growing because I have my
Hmm.
life with my wife in a completely different country and I'm happy, but there are other people still suffering under the way they are secretly acting. That's what he's saying. And
Which
so
is
again,
wild,
which is
and which
wild.
nobody is clocking. But
Exactly.
yeah.
So could be true, could not be true, but it just sort of squashes the whole thing of he's having a temper tantrum. He's not. He's trying to
Mm.
be a vigilante. Whether he's doing it correctly or not, whether he's, right in that or not, that's what he's doing.
My parents have been trying endlessly to ruin my relationship since before my wedding and has not stopped. My mom canceled making Nicola's dress in the 11th hour, despite how excited she was to wear her design, forcing her to urgently find a new dress. Somebody then pulled up a receipt and her dress was in the making for a year. So I don't know what he considers to be the 11th hour. But this feels like champagne problems a little to me.
I'm not going to disagree that this is champagne problems because to some degree or another it is. But as we well know, a lot of brides, especially rich brides, will have a dress for the ceremony and a dress for the evening. So it's very likely
Hmm.
that the dress that was being made for a year could have been the evening dress. And so,
Hmm.
if you think about it, if you're marrying a man whose mother, the woman that's about to become your mother-in-law, has a fashion house, then obviously it's going to be a beautiful thing if you love your mother-in-law to be's fashion, that you would want her to
Hmm.
make your wedding dress. And despite all of the things that saying Victoria hates this woman and all of the family members hate her and don't think she's a part of the family, she still agreed to make the dress but then
Hmm.
pulled out at the last minute. So any person, rich or ordinary, can understand that a wedding dress, especially for the bride to be, is the most important
One of the
material
most
part.
important parts of the day.
Yeah, obviously the most important part is marrying the person you're going to marry, but in terms of the physical, the decorations, all of the extras and all of the pieces that make it this beautiful, aesthetic day that you're going to remember and just fawn over for the rest of your life, the wedding
Mm.
dress is the main event because you as the bride, that's your piece for the
Hmm.
whole, either the whole day or the whole ceremony. So it is going to cause any bride stress when their dress is cancelled at the last hour. Now, Brooklyn didn't give a specific time or date. He said the 11th hour, even though we know about this dress that's being made for a year. Maybe the dress was cancelled a month, 2 months, 3 months before. Who knows? Because he wasn't specific. So even if this other report that, you know, may or may not be true, because even that could be, you know, false. But let's say that is true. The fact that she's pulled out last minute, or the fact that she's cancelled it at all, because it would make sense. It would be more understandable if the bride herself was like, okay, I actually want to go for Valentino Couture instead. But if Victoria Beckham or her fashion house has cancelled it, why have they cancelled it? Unless they've cancelled it on behalf of the bride and groom, there's still an issue there. And we can't ignore that. That's it.
And actually, when it comes down to it, the reason this would be a bigger issue also is because it's your mother-in-law. Like, nobody's going to be don't get me wrong, you'd be stressed anyway. But then if your mother-in-law does this to you, it seems extremely personal. If he is saying that they have been trying to destroy their relationship since before they were even married. Right. And then now she's cancelling her dress at the 11th hour. Exactly. It's like she's being spiteful if what he's saying is correct. Right. And so this is why we can't just,
like, she's trying everything to stop them getting married, essentially.
This is what I'm saying. So this is why we can't just make it seem like this is some random thing that's happening. Yeah. Like, if this is the case, that's crazy. That's wild.
And also, we want to say, because we have had personal experience of this, but it's not as if Victoria is personally making it herself. This is her fashion house. We could fully understand as the sought after, very busy woman that she is, if she personally was making this dress from scratch and was overwhelmed with, you know, work capability, even though this is your first son's first, you know, it's your first child's wedding, so we would think you would prioritize it anyway. But even if she was theoretically making this dress herself and it was getting overwhelming, fair enough, because you've got enough to do. But this is your fashion house. You may probably have never touched that dress. So why is it cancelled?
Weeks before our big day, my parents repeatedly pressured and attempted to bribe me into signing away the rights to my name, which would have affected me, my wife, and our future children. Okay, you're putting this on Instagram. You got to drop the contracts now, because my guess is, like, your dad and mom have maybe owned the Beckham brand, and they're trying to make sure that that's protected away from whatever you and Nicola. I'm guessing this is normal, but just so you know, if you live in a family where the rights to your name are discussed ahead of a wedding, you're doing great, my friend. You are doing so good, man. Like,
I just want to say, this is incredibly annoying to me, because the first thing that she says out of her mouth is, I'm guessing that they're doing this because you're guessing. That's the main point. You don't understand what he's talking about, because this is above you, right? He's bringing this up because he is insinuating that there is something wrong with what they have done, right? He's insinuating that they're trying to take away something from him that will affect his wife and his children, his future children. So when you're guessing and laughing about it, it's actually super disrespectful, right? Because this is something, and not to say, we don't know. None of us are paid enough, including Candace Owens, to really understand what's going on, right? But there has to be some kind of wisdom to see that if he is bringing this up, and don't get me wrong, looking at Victoria and her husband's point of view, I understand why you do want to protect your brand to a certain extent, right? And regardless of the fact that these people are rich, I do understand that there are some legalities with that, because the name Beckham itself is a brand, right? However, when you compound it with all of the things that he's previously said, it doesn't sound good. It sounds like they're essentially trying to shove him out of his own company. That's what it sounds like, right? Now, not to say that that is the case, we don't know, okay? But it really sounds dodgy to me. So when you're here laughing about it and you're saying, oh yeah, you're doing really good, my friend. Well, actually, this actually could be a problem for you, because if it wasn't for the fact that your wife was rich already, you could actually end up in a bad situation financially, right?
If your parents are trying to take away to ordinary poor people problems,
you could go from champagne problems to Lamborghini. That's what you could go from, right? And don't get me wrong, we're not saying, this is what I'm saying, we're not saying that we're, that he's literally going to be some, hobo on the roadside. But when it comes down to it, we just don't know. Like, we don't know what the situation is. And so it's very disrespectful to lie or not even to lie, because I'm not saying she's lying, but she's insinuating that he's lying.
It's speculating in a very assumptive way. And as Cherry said, she's creating the narrative around this because she doesn't have the information. And I think that's what gets us both, is that none of us have the information. So you don't need to spin a story to make it more to what you want. And this is a point that I sort of concluded by the time I got to the end of it, which is that the thing that I think disappoints me the most about how the approach that she's taken is that good journalistic investigation requires observing all of the facts unbiased to see how they match up against another. And according to what Brooklyn's saying, a lot of it adds up, whereas a lot of how his parents have responded do not add up to support them and who they claim to be and the type of people that they claim to be. But then on the other side of it, journalistic reporting, as we know from the news, and especially the more media side of news, is that you're more successful when you spin a story the way you want and you make the people within it come across the way you want, no matter what the real story is. So I'm disappointed in this sense, because the experience that I've had of Candace Owens is that she usually goes for the hardcore facts, and here it's like she's doing everything she can to only focus on her perspective of this whole event, rather than going, actually, what is he actually saying? Is there any validity in this? And even if he was a kid when this first started going down, when he claims it started going down, he is now an adult. Most professionals, including his dad, were making millions. We were saying this in another video. They're making millions and earning their careers from younger than 26. So we cannot say now that just because he grew up as a Nepo baby, that being 26, he's still too young to be able to say his piece and speak and think and make decisions as an adult. So,
hallelujah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Preach, Bridget, because what kind of foolishness is that? And I will just say this quickly. What you should do, and what has frustrated me about so many people, is they don't actually listen to what this person is saying, and they don't look at the facts. Like, I remember for years, right, because Candace Owens also doesn't like Meghan Markle, which is an interesting thing that we'll talk about another day. But I remember for years people were just cussing Meghan Markle, saying she's a horrible person, this. But over time, there has been an overwhelming amount of evidence, specifically when what was that brother's name? I want to say Alfred. Not her brother. The guy who just got his royal title stripped from him. Prince Andrew. Once Prince Andrew came out with his, hobosexuality, right, where he's basically just doing whatever he wants, dealing with this, Epstein situation, it became very clear that if the palace want to shut something down, they can. And let's be real, 100%. When it comes down to it, Meghan was saying in the first place, if they wanted to treat us with respect and shut things down, they could have treated us with respect and shut things down, but they did not. She was explaining that if they wanted to not allow things to go out into the media, that they could have, but they were not only allowing it, they were encouraging it and feeding things into the media, right? Which is causing her all kind of problems, trauma, death threats, everything like this. People literally discussing her and talking about her all the time. So earlier, right, and bear in mind as well, the Beckham'S, David Beckham is Sir David Beckham. The Beckham's institution is like almost like a royalty situation, in terms of the way that they control the media, in terms of the way that they have power over people's perceptions, because how much people like them, because the wife was a Spice Girl, right? And because David Beckham was this big footballer, right? And so really and truly, what is very clearly happening, in my opinion, is that stuff is coming out in the media and was coming out in the media before he spoke, before he came out and said anything, right? And so if that is the case, we need to consider who these people are. This is one young man coming out talking about his family. Bear in mind, his family is this big conglomerate. Few people
that knows them personally as well.
Yes.
Just to add, we're speculating from the outside. He's on the inside.
Exactly. And so my thing is, you have to look at the evidence. When it came down to Meghan, it was overwhelmingly obvious when Andrew was stripped of his titles that this man had been covered up for years. He was doing all kind of disgusting things for years and they were covering up for him, right? So if things are being said and there's this big machine, in fact, the Kardashians are another good example of this. The Kardashians literally control the narrative always, right? They're always controlling the narrative. They're always saying what they, putting out things to cover up things when things go wrong or to say positive things when things go well. So it's not like these are the only celebrities that do this kind of stuff. So I would be more so inclined to believe him than not to believe him. Again, he could be lying. We don't know, but we need to look at this from an objective perspective.
Well guys, we are out of time once again. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Please let us know what you think about everything in the comments below and look out for part 3 of this video. Bye.